The Moon is our rocky companion that has accompanied Earth since its formation 4.5 billion years ago. This cosmic buddy has been there for all our ancestors since day one, affecting everything from ocean tides to nocturnal animals. But what if one day we woke up and it was just gone? So let's take a journey through time and explore the chaos that would ensue if the Moon were to vanish into thin air tomorrow. Part 1. Immediate aftershocks. First up, say goodbye to tides, because no more Moon means no more tides. Wait, why? Well, the Moon's gravity is responsible for about 70% of the Earth's tides. And without its gravitational pull, our oceans would be in for a world of chaos. Tides are ocean water levels rising and falling due to the combined effects of the Moon's and Earth's gravity. The Moon's gravity pulls water from Earth's surface, creating higher levels near the coastlines. As the Earth rotates, different locations experience these higher levels, or high tides, and lower levels, or low tides. The Moon's gravity also affects the Earth's rotation. It's causing ocean water to bulge out on the side facing the Moon and the opposite side of the Earth. These bulges result in elevated sea levels, known as tides. Without the Moon's gravitational influence, these ocean currents would cease to exist. Goodbye, tides. But wait, there's more. The absence of the tides would have a devastating impact on coastal ecosystems. It would cause the collapse of delicate habitats like coral reefs and tidal pools, disrupting marine life cycles and breeding grounds. For example, many shorebirds rely on tidal pools for food and shelter. These birds travel long distances each day to search for food in the tidal pools, and then return to the safety of the pools at night. Without tides, these pools would disappear, leaving the birds without a place to go and no food to eat. As a result, their populations would likely plummet. Similarly, coral reefs depend on the daily fluctuations in water level brought by the tides to bring in fresh food and oxygen. Without this essential ecosystem service, coral reefs could die, taking with them the countless species that depend on them for survival. Life along the coast would never be the same again. Next, brace yourself for darker nights, because here's a fun fact. The Moon doesn't emit any light of its own. Instead, it reflects the sunlight. When the Moon passes between the Earth and the Sun, we experience a total solar eclipse. However, even when the Moon is not in between the Earth and the Sun, its reflected glow lights up our night sky, making it visible from almost anywhere on Earth. Without the Moon, our nights would be significantly darker, making nocturnal animals like owls feel a little less hoot, and more lost and confused. Imagine you're an owl swooping through the darkness in search of prey. You rely on your keen eyesight to spot a field mouse scurrying in the underbrush. But without the Moon's glow illuminating the night, it's harder to see, making it more difficult to find food. Not only would this affect owls, but also other nocturnal creatures like turtles and insects, whose lives are adapted to the current amount of nighttime light. Without the Moon's reflected glow, they would struggle to navigate their surroundings, find food, or communicate with others. In fact, some species of fireflies use the Moon's light to synchronize their flashing patterns during courtship rituals. Without the Moon, these rituals could be thrown into chaos, potentially affecting their ability to reproduce. Plants that rely on nocturnal pollinators like bats and moths might also suffer as the darkness would make it difficult for these pollinators to locate and access the plant's nectar and pollen. So if you thought saying goodbye to the tides was bad, just wait till you hear about the long-term consequences of losing our lunar companion in Part 2, Changes in the Long Term. But first, we gotta talk about how this do-or-die situation would shake up our world in the short term. People living in coastal areas would need to say, "see you later" to their homes, as rising sea levels swallow them whole. No more tides means no more protection from the big bad ocean. Coastal communities would be forced to relocate inland, bringing along their inflatable pool toys and beach umbrellas. But hold up, why are sea levels rising in the first place? Here's the deal. The Moon's gravity is currently helping to keep Earth's sea levels stable. Without its gravitational pull, those ocean levels would be all over the place, leading to higher average sea levels. This would put coastal cities in a precarious position. Places like New York, Los Angeles, Miami, and London would be particularly vulnerable. Imagine you're strolling along the South Bank in London, taking in the view of Big Ben and the London Eye. But instead of the charming backdrop, you're greeted by the murky depths of the River Thames. That's because without the moon's gravitational pull, sea levels have risen, flooding the streets and subways of London. Big Ben might be the only thing left peeking out of the water. Not only would people have to deal with the stress of a potential climate catastrophe, but also the emotional toll of leaving their homes behind. Many people have deep connections to their communities, and leaving them behind would be heartbreaking. Plus, starting over in a new place can be daunting. Imagine having to say goodbye to your friends, family, and favorite spots, like the old oak tree where you used to hang out as a kid. It would be a major bummer. But it's not all doom and gloom, because change can also bring new opportunities. Maybe you've always dreamed of living in a treehouse or a tiny home on wheels. Without the moon, now would be a great time to start planning your dream home. Who knows? Maybe you'll end up in a super cozy cabin on a hill overlooking the newly formed moon crater lake. Just imagine it, sipping hot cocoa while watching the sunset over the crater left by the missing moon. Sounds kind of romantic, right? Plus, think of all the new job opportunities that would arise. There would be a whole new industry dedicated to studying the effects of living without the moon. Scientists, researchers, and data analysts would be in high demand trying to figure out how to adapt to this new reality. Who knows? Maybe you'll be part of the team that discovers a new energy source powered by lunar energy or develops a super advanced telescope to help us navigate the cosmos without the moon's guiding light. The possibilities are truly endless. Okay, back to reality. While the short-term consequences of losing the moon might seem scary, the long-term effects would be even more dramatic. So buckle up for part 2, changes in the long term. First up, Earth would wobble like a drunk toddler after a sugar rush. The moon's gravity helps stabilize Earth's tilt on its axis, keeping our planet at a nice and comfortable 23.5-degree angle. Without the moon, Earth would wobble like crazy, ranging from 30 to 45 degrees. This tilt is crucial for life as we know it. It causes seasons and weather patterns that make Earth habitable. Without the moon, we'd face extreme weather conditions. It's destroying crops and wreaking havoc on our planet's delicate balance. Say goodbye to the 4 seasons we're used to, and hello to chaotic weather patterns that would make Mother Nature look like a bipolar teenager. One minute it's scorching hot, and the next it's freezing cold. Without the moon's gravitational pull to stabilize Earth's tilt, our planet's axis would be all over the place. Let's face it, we don't need any more drama in our lives right now. Next, prepare for a whole new set of problems for the animal kingdom. Animals that rely on the moon for navigation, like sea turtles, would be left utterly confused. These turtles use the moon and stars to find their way back to the ocean after hatching from their eggs on the beach. Without the moon, they'd be disoriented and more vulnerable to predators, which could lead to their extinction. Can you imagine a world without the majestic sea turtle? It's a terrifying thought. Other animals like nocturnal birds would face similar challenges. Without the moon's reflected light, they'd struggle to hunt for food, putting their survival at risk. It's not just animals either. Plants that bloom at night to avoid the scorching daytime heat, like the desert's night-blooming cereus, would lose their cue without the moon's consistent glow. So not only would we lose the moon-shaped cookie-cutter shadow on the wall of my childhood bedroom, but also the intricate balance of nature that we depend on for survival. Talk about a downer ending. While the idea of a world without the moon might sound intriguing at first, the reality is that it would be a disaster for the Earth and everything that calls this planet home. The moon may seem like just a pretty face in the sky, but it plays a vital role in our planet's ecosystem. From the tides to the weather, nothing would be the same without it. So let's just hope that our lunar companion sticks around for many billions of years to come. Earth's wobble. Let's get real for a second. The Earth is kind of wonky. Thanks to all the resources and scientific power that humans have mustered, we've discovered that the Earth isn't actually a perfect sphere. Instead, it's slightly wider at the equator due to the centrifugal force caused by its rotation. However, thanks to gravity, the Earth is a bit flatter at the poles. It's this wobbling of our planet that allows us to have days and nights. And the moon plays a key role in keeping our planet from doing the Macarena every time it rotates. The Earth has an axial tilt of 23.5 degrees. That means that the top of our planet is always pointed towards the North Star, which happens to be the star we refer to as Polaris. This tilt is responsible for our seasons. When the northern hemisphere is tilted towards the sun, we experience summer, and when it moves away, we see winter. Now, thanks to the gravitational pull of the moon, this tilt stays fairly consistent. Even though gravitational forces from the sun and other planets are constantly trying to mess with us, without the moon to stabilize our wobble, the Earth would begin to do the Macarena, and our axis of rotation would become increasingly wobbly, oscillating wildly between 20 to 40 degrees. Don't get me wrong, dancing is great exercise and super fun, but not when it comes to our planet. These major shifts in our axial tilt would make our climate go from hot to cold to hot to cold faster and more drastically than ever before. In fact, the average tilt of exoplanets that are orbiting sun-like stars is about 30 to 60 degrees. So our 23.5-degree tilt is already on the lower side of things. And according to scientists, if our planet had no moon, it would probably have a tilt closer to 60 degrees, which means we'd have extreme versions of the seasons. We'd either have 6 months of scorching heat, followed by 6 months of unbearable cold, or both halves of the year, to be split in half with summer and winter lasting only 3 months each. Either way, none of those sound like very appealing options. Also, another thing that might happen is that our planet could flip its proverbial skirt and land on its side, which would also cause big problems for life as we know it. It turns out that the presence of the moon has made Earth a bit more hospitable to life, because it helps regulate our climate. Without the moon, our planet would be a bit toasty, but not in a good way. As the moon disappears, the northern hemisphere would continue to warm up for quite some time, perhaps becoming a sauna compared to the rest of the planet. Then after about 40 million years, our planet's tilt would finally stabilize again, resulting in a much colder Earth. Over billions of years, these radical changes in temperature would likely lead to massive ice ages, meaning that life would probably go extinct, or species that can survive extreme temperatures would dominate the planet. Kind of like how all the plants died and now cacti are having a moment. Climate breakdown. Aside from the wobbling, the disappearance of the moon would also lead to the breakdown of our climate system. The moon is a big, bright ball in the sky, and its gravitational pull is strong enough to have an impact on the jet streams that surround our planet. You know those fast-moving rivers of air that help regulate our climate by moving warm and cold air from one place to another? Well, without the moon's gravitational pull, those rivers of air would break into tributaries and head in random directions. According to NASA, the jet streams would likely slow down and then suddenly swerve in unexpected directions. This would mean that weather patterns around the globe would become extremely unpredictable. Summers would be hotter and winters would be colder, but not in that fun winter wonderland type of way. Just think about the last time the weather was all wonky. Remember how the storms kept coming and it was freezing rain one day and then a tornado the next? Yeah, that was crazy and kind of scary. Well, it would be like that all the time. What makes it worse is that we couldn't predict the wonkiness. Currently, meteorologists can use jet stream patterns to accurately forecast the weather. But without the moon, predicting the weather would become nearly impossible. This could lead to huge storms, floods, droughts, and heat waves happening all over the place, wiping out entire ecosystems in a matter of days. It would be complete and total chaos. What's worse, the polar vortexes would become either more intense or disappear altogether. What's a polar vortex, you ask? Well, the North Pole vortex is basically a large area of low pressure and cold air that stays relatively close to the ground. It's called a vortex because it spins counterclockwise and acts like a giant shield, protecting the northernmost parts of the US, Canada, Europe, and Asia from the coldest parts of winter. And scientists believe that the jet streams help guide and contain the polar vortex. So if the jet streams became all wonky, then the polar vortex wouldn't be so stable anymore. One minute it would be fine, and then the next it would expand, bringing freezing cold temperatures to places that aren't used to it. People in Florida would need to wear parkas and scarves while sipping hot cocoa. And don't even get me started on the wildfires. Hotter temperatures and erratic winds would lead to uncontrollable forest fires that would ravage North America and Eurasia, releasing huge amounts of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, further accelerating climate change. It would be a never-ending cycle of destruction. Yeah, we really do owe a lot to that big old hunk of rock in space. If the moon were to magically vanish, Earth would quickly devolve into a chaotic hellscape. Thankfully, the moon is here to stay, but that doesn't mean that we should take it for granted. Next time you look up at the moon, be sure to thank it for stabilizing our planet and regulating our climate. Also, be sure to thank the moon for inspiring some of the best memes on the internet. I mean, who else is going to save us from the aliens if the moon goes away? We're screwed. Now, check out why your poop floats in the toilet, or click this other video instead. But do it quick, because in 65 million years, Earth will explode. Mass extinctions begin. We'll start with the least chaotic consequence of moon loss and work our way up. Some species would immediately face extinction. And I know you're probably thinking about iconic animals like sloths or horny toads, but nah. The animals most impacted by the moon's disappearance would be ones that relied on the moon's cycle for their survival. One example is the red crab. These crabs only lay eggs once a year after mating during a lunar event known as the blue moon, which is the second full moon in a calendar month.
Oh.
Without the moon's cycle, these crabs would never get the memo to mate and would quickly die out. Similarly, many species of deep-sea creatures use the moon's cycle to time their spawning, so they'd be pretty screwed without it. It turns out that even some land creatures rely on the moon to get busy. In Costa Rica, there's a frog called the red-eyed tree frog, whose mating is directly correlated to the phases of the moon. Scientists believe this is because moonlight makes their habitats more visible and therefore safer for mating. But it's also possible that the frog's internal biological clocks are actually synced to the lunar cycle. Whatever the case, these little frogs need the moon, or else they can't get busy. Many animal species would immediately go extinct without the moon. But other species would go extinct due to disrupted migration patterns. Migration madness. Every year, many animals travel thousands of miles each way to find new sources of food or more favorable climates. But how do they do this? For many animals, navigation is a piece of cake since they can read the stars and use the sun and Earth's magnetic field to help guide them. But for others, migration is a bit trickier. Many birds, for example, use visual landmarks to navigate. This includes mountains, rivers, forests, and coastlines, all of which are illuminated by moonlight. Without the moon, night-flying birds like the common nighthawk would struggle to find their way around. On the bright side, this might mean an end to dangerous coyote attacks, though. Not all animals that migrate at night fly. Insects like moths and cicadas also use the moon for navigation, relying on its position to tell them which direction to head. So without the moon, we could see the end of insect migration, which in turn could lead to massive ecological imbalances. Now, imagine if the moon disappeared mid-migration. For animals that were already in flight, they would become disoriented and crash into one another, or, things they shouldn't, like buildings or trees. And that wouldn't just be bad for the animals, it would also be really bad for humans. For example, every year, monarch butterflies travel hundreds of millions of miles across North America to reach their overwintering grounds. Without the moon, this journey would become too dangerous for these delicate creatures, and we'd likely see the end of the monarch butterfly. Similarly, many whales migrate thousands of miles each year, traveling between feeding and breeding grounds. This behavior is driven by changes in the availability of prey and water temperature, both of which are influenced by lunar cycles. Humpback whales, for example, time their breeding season to the full moon when their prey is most abundant. Without the moon, whales would be forced to continue migrating past their breeding grounds in search of food, which would exhaust them and make it much harder to reproduce. Ultimately, the disappearance of the moon would lead to mass extinctions among migratory species. But it would also cause problems for organisms that don't migrate. Reproductive cycles fail. The moon's gravitational pull affects more than just the tides. It also influences reproductive cycles in some animals. Take coral reefs, for example. As you may have guessed, coral reefs rely on a healthy ocean ecosystem to survive, and a healthy ocean ecosystem relies on coral reefs. So when something goes wrong with either one, both suffer. One thing that can disrupt coral reef ecosystems is failed coral reproduction. And guess what? Corals rely on moonlight to successfully reproduce. When moonlight hits the surface of the ocean, it reflects UV light that allows corals to release their sperm and eggs into the water. Without moonlight, coral reproduction would slow dramatically and coral reef ecosystems would begin to crumble. But corals aren't the only ones who rely on the moon to get busy. Many insects use moonlight to time their mating rituals, including the infamous June bug. These large beetles only emerge from their cocoons during full moons, which means they only have one night to find a mate. If the moon disappears, June bugs will wake up confused and lonely and never get the chance to pass on their genes. Even some mammals rely on moonlight for successful reproduction. Without the moon, reproductive hormones in some species would no longer sync up with the environment, leading to lower birth rates and eventual extinction. Plants go wild. Plants are kind of like the wild children of the natural world. While some are rooted in one place for their entire lives, others are constantly on the move. Take mangroves, for example. These unique trees grow in salty coastal waters and rely on the moon to determine their growth. During a full moon, mangroves open their tiny water-absorbing roots to take in extra salt from the ocean. Without the moon, mangroves won't get the memo and drown in the salty water. Similarly, without the moon's gravity, plants on Earth would start to grow in weird directions. See, the moon's gravitational pull affects not just the tides, but also the way plants grow. As the moon rotates the Earth, its gravity pulls on the water in plant cells, which causes them to elongate and bend towards the moon. So without the moon, plants would stop elongating and bending and just grow straight up. But there's one type of plant that would actually benefit from the moon's disappearance. You've probably heard Billie Eilish's song about it, but now get ready to hear about it from us. Meet the sensitive areas, a small group of plants that only bloom in complete darkness. Their flowers are sensitive to even the tiniest amount of light, which is why they bloom when there's none. These bizarre plants rely on increased carbon dioxide levels at night to drive photosynthesis, which means they only grow during the dark hours of the day. This unique ability allows them to avoid daytime predators and thrive in otherwise unsuitable environments. So while most plants would suffer without the moon, the sensitive areas would finally get some much-needed sunlight. No more tides. The moon is Earth's celestial babysitter, keeping everything in line, including our oceans. You've probably seen what the moon does to the tides. It makes them go up and down. Without the moon, our oceans would still have tides, but they wouldn't be nearly as dramatic. That's because while the moon is on duty, Earth's gravity keeps 90% of the ocean water within 60 miles of Earth's surface. Without the moon's helping hand, Earth's gravity would pull about half of the ocean water closer to the planet, creating higher high tides and lower low tides. To make matters worse, the Gulf Stream, a current that brings warm water from the tropics to Europe, would slow significantly, leading to much colder temperatures throughout the continent. But even without the Gulf Stream's slowdown, Europe would face some major problems as a result of the moon's disappearance. Coastal communities collapse. Bye-bye beaches. Without the moon, rising sea levels would quickly erase many coastal communities from existence. This would not only displace millions of people, but also destroy valuable infrastructure and ecosystems. Entire cities built on coastlines like New York City, Miami, and Los Angeles would be underwater, leading to mass evacuations and economic disaster. But it wasn't just coastal communities that would suffer. Without the moon's stabilizing influence, weather patterns would become increasingly erratic, leading to more extreme storms and higher average temperatures. Farmers would struggle with unpredictable growing seasons, and food shortages would become widespread. All in all, life on Earth would become a lot less comfortable without the moon. So let's just hope it stays in the sky for a long, long time.